Good morning. My name is Maggie Rivas Rodriguez. Today is July 31st, 2018. We are in Los Angeles, California, interviewing Stephen Chavez for the Voces Oral History Project. Thank you, Mr. Chavez, for agreeing to be interviewed by our project. And so I'm going to just kind of tell you a little bit about what we're doing here. So this is being videotaped. That videotape will be at the Netta D. Benson Library at the University of Texas at Austin.
Mm-hmm.
But this is kind of your interview and Mike asking you questions. So if there's anything that you don't want to answer, you don't have to answer.
Okay.
You're under no obligation. If there's something that you really want to talk about, and I'm not asking you that question, you should speak up and let me know.
Okay.
If you have to stop for any reason, there's a bottle of water next to you. If you need a sip of water, if you need to go to the men's room, we can stop.
Okay.
So just so you know that we're going to be housing this at a library. It's going to be available for anybody to see. So if there's anything that you prefer that your family not know about, this probably would not be a good time to tell them.
Yes.
Okay?
Good advice.
Okay. So I'm going to start off with growing up.
Okay.
And I just briefly looked over your paperwork, but can you tell me about growing up and your parents, you know, what that was like?
I'd like to talk about my parents, 'cause it's a big part of my life. I have a lot of respect and love for them. They're from New Mexico. They migrated to California they've been in New Mexico since 1830. It was a territory, became a territory. It was Mexico and then became a territory of the United States and eventually became New Mexico, Lincoln County. They migrated to California during World War II. They were looking for work. So they ended up in Wilmington working in the shipyards and the railroad there. So I was the firstborn in California because of that migration. And I was born in California, in Los Angeles. And we lived in South Central Los Angeles, which would be Watts, Compton, Central Los Angeles, a little bit on the west side. So I grew up in South Central and went to grammar school there, went to a parochial grammar school. I was institutionalized 12 years in parochial schools, Catholic schools, okay? So I started in South Central Los Angeles, going to a Catholic parochial school, Holy Cross Grammar School. And it was a mixed school. At the time, it was about 1959, 1957, 58. There was a big migration of blacks from the South. There was a lot of discrimination, a lot of racial tension there. So we went to school. My school was filled with a lot of people from Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, along with the Mexicans that lived in the area, which weren't too many. So I went there and I graduated from the grammar school without incident. There was no problem. A lot of racial tension started in the early 60s.
Before we get to all that, I want to go back and talk about your parents, because your father was a World War II veteran, right?
Oh, yes.
So he was in the Marines.
My dad was in World War II in the Marine Corps. My dad migrated over here, and when he was 16, worked a little bit in downtown area, and then joined the Marine Corps in 1943. Ended up going to Guam, Saipan, the occupation of Japan, because by then the atomic bomb was dropped. He went to the occupation of Japan, and then from there he went to Shanghai, China, and that's where the Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek were battling out for the communist thing. So they stayed there for a while. Then he was brought home and discharged. My two uncles were also in World War II, but they were in Europe. They were at the Battle of the Bulge. My uncle Alejandro Baca was in Brussels, and he was in the Battle of the Bulge with Patton. He jumped into a foxhole and looking for some ammunition and asked him, "Hey, buddy, you got any ammo?" And it was his cousin Alejandro from the same town he was from, so they met in that foxhole right there. That was a little story that he told us. He ended up marrying a lady from Brussels, so we have some French connection cousins right there. So I was always proud of my uncles. My uncle Max, his brother was in the service. My uncles from my mom's side of the family, they were also in the service. So I was very proud of my dad's service. I think that had a little bit of to do with me enlisting at the time. I thought it was my duty to do so. It wasn't patriotism more so than it was my duty to do it. So that's why I enlisted as opposed to drafting.
So what had your parents been doing in New Mexico before they came to California?
My parents, my grandfather worked in the railroad, Santa Fe Railroad Department. They were in a town called Los Chavez, which is where Dennis Chavez, the senator, was from. And they were in that town. They were basically gatherers. They gathered food. They had their own little farm. And that was it. Before that, my great-grandmother and my great-great-grandmother, they were from Lincoln County. This is territory. They married, they were near Fort Stanton, and they used to supply the fort with dairy product and milk and cheese and stuff. Well, my great-great-grandmother ended up married a person from that fort. His name was Daniel McKinley. So we have a lot of McKinley blood in us now. Well, my mother's maiden name was Chavez, but my grandparents were McKinleys. They were married to the person that retired from the fort. He was a Medal of Honor recipient. I don't tell too many people that because he received his Medal of Honor in the Indian campaign. So there was the Apache Indians that were in that area.
So you don't tell people about it because you don't think it's very heroic?
I think the fact that we have a multicultural, diverse thing, it's different. It's sort of it's sort of hard to do that because they were killing indigenous people or hunting, or he was a scout. It was for scouting. He did receive the Medal of Honor. It's on the records there. I have a copy of it. But because of, I don't know, it's a racial thing, I believe. It would be racial on my part, but in reverse. I just didn't project that too much.
What was his name?
His name was Daniel McKinley.
And he was your mother's?
He was my mother's grandfather. I have pictures of him, too. I also have pictures of my cousins with Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid roamed that area. They talked about him quite a bit also. That was in the Lincoln County area of New Mexico.
So they were McKinleys, and so McKinley married a Mexican-American or Mexican woman or something?
Yes, McKinley married Padilla. And then they married, then the Chavez came into the mix. My dad was from Bernalillo and my mom was from Los Chavez. Both families migrated independently, didn't know each other in New Mexico, ended up living across the street from each other. And that's kind of how they met and got together right there.
In California?
In California, yeah. And then my mom's name was Chavez. His name was Chavez, too, so I'm a Chavez. We have a lot of relatives in New Mexico.
So it seems like your family moving to California and working in the defense industry,
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they were able to have a pretty middle-class standard of living by the time you came around.
I would say we never were hungry. And they paid for a private school for us. My dad was a pressman when he got out of the thing. He worked 55 years at the same company and retired from there as a pressman, running a printing press and so.
What company was
Royal Paper Box Company. They were very good to him too. They treated us very well when he passed away.
So people who watch this, and especially young people, are not going to know what a pressman is. What is that?
Okay, Pressman is running a printing press that's probably the size of a house. They're huge. They run now on computers. And the rolls of paper, it's not sheets of paper. These things are rolls of paper that are bigger, as big as a truck. So he would run these presses for for companies that would put their product in a box. And then they would have a box and it would fold and then they would sell it. Revlon, Disney, these big companies that would bread. So he worked 50 years there. They would cut these big sheets, have them folded, glued, and come out ready to go. And he did that for 50. The thing that impresses me was that he stayed there 55 years and worked at the same company for 55 years. Unbelievable. I really respected that a lot from him.
What made you respect that?
I think the dedication, the whole culture of being dedicated in that sense, perseverance, his sense of duty. He was a really good man, and I really respected him. And I think I tried to emulate some of his culture, his habits. I've been married 42 years for my wife, so I'm trying to follow in those footsteps right there.
So not to belabor this, but when you talk about the paper part of it, was the paper glued on the box? Is that how it worked?
No, these were cardboard,
Oh, so it was cardboard.
pasteboard or
Oh,
cardboard,
I see. So
yeah.
rolls it was cardboard that he printed on.
Yes, thin cardboard, but it was rolls of cardboard, huge thing.
And so then you ended up having your siblings. How many siblings was it?
I have 2 sisters and 1 brother. And they didn't go into my brother went into the Marine Corps for a while, and he didn't follow through on it. My 2 sisters became nurses. They went to school, and both of them became nurses. One of my sisters has passed on. She had a handicapped child. I was there at the birth. The child had multiple handicaps, but she's doing fine now. She's blind, 1 eye, deaf, diabetes, hepatitis, open heart surgery on when she was born. So my sister passed away, and I'm the conservator now of her child. She has I'm the conservator and caregiver for a 38-year-old child. We're doing good. She's living happy. She's part of the family. It's amazing. I learned how to sign to communicate, and God's blessed us with her. It's a blessing. I'm happy. I'm happy about what I'm crying about is joy. I think that's a big part of my PTSD in my therapy there too. Is I've learned that a lot of joy is in giving. A lot of we were talking about a lot of joy is having happiness in other people's accomplishments. I never did that before. I started doing that, and I started feeling a little bit of life. I think I lost a little bit of my childhood when I was in Vietnam, and that part of my life just went away. And when I came back, it kind of was a catch-up to that. It was a mystery, and but I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
So Stephen, why was it important for your family that you all go to Catholic school?
I think it was the education where we were at. I would have had to go to a real rough school called Manual Arts, Jefferson. Those were really, really rough schools. They were all black, gang thing. I live with the blacks. I love their culture. All my neighbors were black. It was different growing up as a Mexican in a black neighborhood, you know. When I got older, I started coming to East LA to the dances, had a car, got to know the buses system and stuff like that. So I would come over here seeking culture, seeking something that wasn't there at the time, you know. But I think we grew up with all the sacraments. I was an altar boy. It was good. It kept me on the straight and narrow. I didn't do tattoos. I didn't do drugs. I didn't do nothing. I just was trying to be okay, you know.
So did your parents talk to you about, what was going to happen after you finished school?
No. Encouraging me to go to college a little bit. I did. I print very well because I wanted to be a draftsman. I got into graphic arts, photography, printing because my dad. All those institutions or exercises require organization and stuff like that, printing and on the line and all that stuff. So that was what I loved. And mathematics, I was great. Or still pretty good. But I think they kind of encouraged it. They pointed me to different schools. I went to Catholic schools that required testing, and I tested and was accepted in two of the big schools here, very hard to get into. So they were private. So I went there. And afterwards, I made the decision to enlist.
So you graduated in 1968.
68.
And how much after that how much time after you graduated did you enlist?
I enlisted before I graduated. I enlisted when I was 18. In January of that year, June is when we graduated. So I had to wait till June. I enlisted and had to wait till June so I could graduate, and then I left.
Did you talk to your parents about it before you enlisted?
Before I enlisted, no, yes, I did. I told them I enlisted, and my mom dropped me off at the enlistment spot that morning by just me and her, and she dropped me off. She was crying. I was excited. It was like a life event, big event for me. So I just gave up on that, and I did a lot of things. They gave me leeway. Like when I got married, I told her I was going to get married. I told my parents I made the decision to do those things. So I appreciate the way they raised me and allowed me to make decisions. That's the way I treat my child and my grandchild. I want them to make decisions. Let me know what the decision is. I can ask that. But it's their decision, their life. So I respect it that much.
So, Stephen, you chose to go into the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that?
Well, I don't like camping. I never did. I didn't want to go sleeping in a tent. So I took the test for everything, and the Air Force and the Navy are the hardest to get into, and I got the Air Force. So I just went into the Air Force, even though it was 4 years, because if you get drafted, it's only 2 years. And if you join the Army or Marine Corps, it's 3 years. But when you go into the Air Force or Navy, it's 4 years. I thought I was going to be a jet mechanic. They said you're going to be a maintenance man. But I was a munitions maintenance man. I handled explosives. That's what my job was.
And what exactly did that entail?
It entails everything from picking up the munitions, transporting them, storing them, breaking them out of their crates and packages, assembling them. They don't come ready to go. You have to assemble them, move them to the aircraft, hang them on the plane, set the timers, set the lanyards for them to go off, and then that's one part of the job. One time in Vietnam, they sent me to what they call flip dynamite crates. The crates would be sitting on pallets in a cool area, covered. You had to look underneath for little snakes and vipers. I found a couple. They curl up underneath the boxes so it could be cool. You just get a 2x4 and just slide them away, you know. They're about this long. They'll kill you. So I was, because the dynamite was sitting there, every month the nitroglycerin would start soaking down and you don't want it to puddle. So you would flip the crate so that the thing would keep on circulating in there. So we would flip crates and then like that. That was one little job I had there. Napalm crew, what they call storage, which would be, they call it weed abatement. It would be cutting weeds with the idiot stick. They call it weed abatement. And that would be part of the job. It just entailed everything about munitions. Getting rid of bad munitions that wasn't good. We'd have to take it out and explode it or burn it or whatever we had to do. Huh?
How did you know it was bad?
Well, there'd be a crack in it, or the grooves that where you put the other munitions would be damaged. The napalm is an electrical; it has a battery in it, and if the conduit, if you check it with the A1 tester, and the wires are not right and it doesn't jibe, then we would just discard it, mark it, and then later on, after we built up the napalm, delivered the napalm, stored it, hung it on, put it on trucks, transported it over there, we would come back and get the bad ones, take it to the burn pit, punch holes into it, and light it up. Big old thing.
Where were these burn pits?
Huh?
Where were these burn pits?
At the edge of the perimeters. There was a perimeter. We had a base the size of a university. It would be about that size, except it had a long runway on it, and we would live inside the base. So it was fairly large, you know, and we would take it out to the burn pits at the perimeter and set it off there.
What was the name of this base?
The name of the base was called Phan Rang Air Base, and it was near the ocean. It was in what they call a second corps. Vietnam is broken up into 3 corps: Third Corps, Second Corps, First Corps, and it goes from the top to the middle to the Mekong Delta on the bottom. So you'll hear veterans say, "What corps were you in?" And you'll say First Corps, Second, Third Corps. They'll know where you were at and stuff like that.
So let's go back just a little bit. So you enlisted in the military.
I love my Vietnam brothers too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were any of them? Did you have anybody from high school that you knew from your neighborhood that went in at the same time?
Yeah.
How many of them would you say?
About 5 that I know of. 1 cousin, 2 cousins that lived in the area, and 3 neighbors. 3 neighbors went. This was a source of my PTSD. This is the part that's hard. And I can talk about it now because I couldn't talk about it before. I had to go through cognitive recovery and all kinds of therapy. My neighbor and myself went into the military. Michael Montiano Lara. But he went in the Army. And he went to Vietnam. We were in Vietnam at the same time. And we used to write to each other. Now, Vietnam, you don't see guys. You know, it's not that small of a place. It's a California, you know, it's large. Smaller than California. But anyway, it's large. And I never saw him, but one day I received a letter saying that my letter was not deliverable because he was killed in action. He died in 9/11/69. So, you know, war kills. Good people die.
How old was he?
He was 19. The hard part came when I came back home. And I had to go see his mom. And that was hard. I saw his little brothers and sisters. And they looked at me like if I had him in my pocket. Where's Michael? You came back. So from there, I went back and I I volunteered to go back. I didn't know what to do. I had a problem. And she was very bitter. She said, there was a ceasefire. What happened to Michael? They killed my son. So I stayed there. What took you so long to come to see me? It took 2 weeks for me to get there because I was home for a week, and then I was going to report to my next base assignment. I went into Vietnam my first year there, so I had 3 more years to go. So I re-enlisted. I volunteered to go back to Vietnam at that point. I didn't get it. They sent me to Thailand. I went back overseas to Siam, which I didn't know where that was. So it was an experience, a better experience in Vietnam. More work. We worked 6 days a week, 13 hours a day, 14. Sometimes you got a half day off before your day off. But we worked. We had B-52s, and they were doing the Operation Linebacker. They were doing Rolling Thunder. They were doing, Nixon was bombing. So we worked. We were piling bombs on B-52s. They were going three an hour all day long. So I worked there for a year and then came home and discharged at that point. Michael's mom ended up just ruined her life. They divorced the family. I kind of keep in touch with the family a little bit now. I'm able to talk to them. But the mom I never got to see again. She passed away already. Michael Montiano Lara was his name. And that was sad.
Do you know how he died?
He was a medic. And usually the first person that gets killed is a medic or the radio guy. They try to kill the communication, try to kill that and demoralize people. So he was killed in I think he was in a Jeep and it hit a landmine, I think is what happened on his case. I went to grammar school with him. He was my neighbor and stuff like that.
So I want to get into a little bit of the technical stuff. So when you were in Vietnam and you were working on munitions, what kind of airplanes did you all support? Did you need to support?
In Vietnam, we supported what they call tactical attack jets, F-100, call them the Huns. They're the old leftovers from the Korean War. Then the Phantoms came in, the F-4s. We had F-4s. We had B-57 bombers, which are Canaveras, because the Australian Air Force was there with us. So they had their Canaveras, which is the same as a B-57. So we kind of shared, their mechanics shared parts, and we shared munitions. Sometimes they would come and trade. We would trade with the Koreans, or we would trade with the Aussies. They would want munitions, we would want steaks. The Koreans would give us steaks, and we'd have a big old party, and we would trade some munitions that we had extra.
So this was not official trading?
This was not official trading, no. Boots, they loved our boots. The Koreans loved our boots. They were good people, Koreans. Great. They were, the Tiger Division was there with us. We had the Australians there with us. We had the 101st Airborne with us on the same base. And then we had the Air Force was there too.
So the kinds of munitions, what exactly are the types of munitions?
We had 750 pound hard case bombs, high explosive. They were just your regular bomb with a fin on it. We had 500 pounders, which was the narrower one, smaller. We had napalm, which we call soft case because it was made out of aluminum. And it would have an electrical charge in it. And then we would hook up the wires, and we would hook up what they call Willie Peter white phosphorus caps with explosive things. This is the buildup. We would get a plain thing, take it out of the crate, put the lugs in, put the battery in, hook up the white phosphorus, hook up the blasting charges, and it would be ready to go, except the battery. It's battery operated. So they would hook up this lanyard to the battery, and once the plane dropped it, the weight would just pull this battery to start, just like you start the little batteries in your watch, and it would have a circuit. Now that you have a circuit going. Now, if you touch the circuit, it's called, what do they call that? You breach it. A short. You create a short in the system. Well, the thing is tumbling down, and once it hits the ground, it happens so fast, the short is created. It creates a short in the system, which creates a white phosphorus to blow up. So then you have an explosion of all this stuff and things. So that's how that worked. We had rockets. We had rockets that we put into the rocket pods for the helicopters and stuff like that. And then we had small arms, bullets, hand grenades, dynamite, things of that sort.
So the other men who were with you in this unit working with munitions, were there any other Mexican Americans?
Very few. There was a few. We spotted each other. Most of them were Texas. You get Texas, and you get a few from California, but mostly Texas were there. Not very many, but when we spotted each other, we would kind of gravitate to each
So
other.
it was just by seeing somebody they looked Mexican?
Yeah.
Did y'all speak Spanish?
No, we just said hello in Cuba in kind of slang Spanish, yeah. The music, they listened to mariachi at the time, or more classical Spanish ballads and stuff like that. They loved that. The Texans loved to drink beer and listen to music, you know. So they were there. Now we had Puerto Ricans there also, but they just wasn't the same as the Mexican side, you know.
Is it because they listened to different music?
Maybe it was a salsa, the type of music they listened to. Maybe it was a Spanish language type of thing, but they were not West Coast. They were kind of East Coast type of thing. There was a different culture there, but mostly a few blacks in that area, but mostly Minnesota corn-fed white dudes, you know, were there.
So, did any of these munitions ever explode while they were on the ground?
Yeah, a couple times. From us, we exploded some of them too. One time they had a filler called Minol that would expand in the heat in the tropics, so they stopped using it. What happened was expansion into this case would make it so hot and a lot of pressure. It would crack the casing open. They call that a low explosive train. That would be a low-end explosion. You need a high explosive. You need one explosion, another explosion, another explosion, and then that would be a high-end explosion. That never happened. That would happen when they dropped the bomb. But on our end, it was a low end because the pressure just built up the case, and it was a manufacturing defect that cracked the bomb open. It's burning. You know, it's not good to be around because it pops, you know, but it won't blow you up. They had us in revetments, which is mounds of dirt on each side, and we would work inside these revetments, huge mounds. And I was asking my supervisor, wow, that's real good that they protect us from the rockets and the rocket attacks. So we would get rocket attacks. And he said, no, son, that's that's for the other people, in case we get blown up over here, it won't blow them up. The explosion would be shaped up. So I said, oh, okay, not good, not good. So I thought it was for us, but it was actually the other end.
I did not understand that about the low train and the high train.
The high train explosive and low train
Can
explosive,
you
yeah.
explain that a little bit?
Well, you need to. It's part of the science of munitions ordnance. Is you need to get a big explosion. You need a train, a small explosion to make a bigger explosion, to make a bigger explosion to actually set off the bomb to blow, and all that happens like simultaneously and stuff like that. The pellets or the dynamite that's inside the bomb is actually granule gunpowder, and the shape of the gunpowder, if it be long, or if it be like rice shaped, or circular like a BB, or hollow, each one burns differently. Each one has a different combustion level. So that's how they calculate the thickness of the thing, the size of the bomb, and how you build up your train. When we get the bomb, it's just a bomb, and it has all the everything protective straps, everything to protect it. And we have to cut the strap, take off the pieces, and then we have to put in the lower end munitions, the cups, the tetra cups, the fuse. At the end, we put a fuse, and the fuse has has a tube, and there's a circular tunnel on one end, and the firing pin is on the bottom. So when the plane drops this bomb, there's a propeller in the front. You ever see it in the movies? All that noise and all the propellers going down. All the propeller doing is lining up that chamber to the firing pin. You see? Now once it's lined up so that the firing pin can go through the chamber to detonate the thing, it locks in place. So many turns of that propeller will turn that thing and lock it in place. So we put the fins on. I mean, we put the fins on too, but we put the fuses in, and then again they lock it to the aircraft. So when they drop it, this thing is pulled out and it starts the process right there. We'd get fuses and say, "Give me 2 fuses," and we'd be doing that. That's how we worked there. People would see us working and say, "We're out of here," and we would say, "Yeah, leave," But they used to tell us. I said, "What happens if we blow up?" He said, "You won't feel the heat. You'll be in so many pieces, you'll be gone." And I said, "Wow." So we used to say, "We won't feel the heat." That was our slogan. Don't worry, we won't feel the heat. So that was the way. And we really didn't think about the danger as opposed to the job, to do the job. There's a couple pictures that I submitted that I went to Cameron Bay on an in-country R&R to visit somebody that I was in school with. And they had 10,000-pound, what they call 10,000-pound bombs. And I have pictures of those. They were the size of a Volkswagen. And they dropped them with parachutes. So we didn't have any of those. We had some old World War II stuff. We had some stuff dated 1952, and we got rid of that too. But
So, was your base ever attacked?
yeah, we were rocketed. I'm talking about rockets hitting, like knocking you down, hitting like up close. We were rocketed about 65 days out of the year that I was there. So every 4 days we would receive 20, 30 rockets. They weren't good shots. These people can't shoot. I mean, they'd hit all over, but they would walk them. They would hit one and use that as a focal point and then start stepping them. That's how they would do. So you would get one, and then they'd start stepping it. You see one of them hit the post office, while some people were there, killed a couple people. Couple hit a plane, which was the big thing. That's the hardware. That's what we got there. That's what cost the most money. Excuse me. So one of them got hit, F-100, and our base was breached once with about 5 or 6 sappers that tried to get through. But
Zappers?
sappers, yeah.
What's a sapper?
It's a combatant person that's trying to infiltrate. Usually they have satchel fire. Usually the Viet Cong would be that would be synonymous with their thing. Sappers would be just they call suicide bombers, basically. You know.
So, kind of going back a little bit more, in 1968, there was a lot of anti-war protests going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the time that you went in.
Hmm?
That's the time that you enlisted,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, what did you think about the war at the time? What did you think was going on there?
There was not as much anti-war demonstrations on the street yet. About 68 was still kind of early. I saw the Buddhists burning themselves. You remember that on Life magazine? And I said, "What is this? These people are burning themselves over what they believe in." I thought it was so strong and everything. And then I started reading and found out it was Buddhist monks from Vietnam. This was a Vietnam protest. So I said, what are they doing? Why are they protesting? And then why don't they give them what they want? Then found out found out the United States involvement. A year before I went, the base that I'm at, Plan Rang, I was working at a shoe store, and his brother, he said, "Hey, the base got attacked where my brother's in." That was during the Tet Offensive. I got there just after the Tet Offensive. And all the bases were attacked. And it was Phan Rang. I said, where's he at? He said, Phan Rang. I said, oh. And I didn't know that eventually I was going to end up there. But the protests were not as much in the streets before I left as they were when I came home. By 69, 70, that's when all the protests really were out in the street. What was protesting was in magazine covers and stuff like that. Kennedy was the president. Nobody really. He's the one that started Vietnam too, Eisenhower and Kennedy. But everybody loved Kennedy at the time, so there was no problem there.
But so when you went to Vietnam, what did you know about Vietnam? Do you remember?
I just remember the Buddhist monks, and that's it. When I got there, what I can remember is the smell when he got off the plane. It wasn't a dirty smell. It wasn't a bad smell. It was a hot smell. It smelled like hay, real hot in the sun. It was just like wow. So that was my first impression, was the heat, and that's it. I didn't know too much about it. The food, Vietnamese food, I didn't know nothing about, and the country. I knew about. The French were there. I knew about the Battle of Dien Bien Phu because I did some reading, and the Buddhist monks. So that's all I knew about Vietnam. It wasn't too much about Vietnam and patriotism again. It was the duty. I signed up for this. I got on the truck, and I'm going. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to do what I'm told to do is really what I did.
So before you went to Vietnam, had you ever been outside of the country before?
No. Never.
Have you been outside of the state?
To New Mexico and back. That's about it. So I had never. This was a big adventure for me.
So, what besides it being hot, what were your impressions of Vietnam and of the people?
I really didn't. My first impression was really nothing. I didn't have any love for their food. I saw their hats. I loved the hats. I got there, started working with some, just kind of like, they had nationals, Vietnamese nationals. Every base that the United States rents from another country, they sign an agreement that they have to hire 75% of the workforce from the local area. You can't bring in people from out. It's an agreement. Japan got it, Korea got it, and Vietnam had it. So most of the workers, we had nationals that were working with us. So we started working with them, started knowing them, and so forth. Um, I started really, I started volunteering for different things. I volunteered for what they call civic action. We went out to the village and they were giving money and donations to a Catholic school that was there. There's a few Catholics in Vietnam. There's 1 million in Korea, but in Vietnam there's a few, and they were giving some money and some items to them, so I would go with them. And I started taking pictures, photographs. I learned how to develop my own film right there. We were in a squadron next to the Photoshop that the reconnaissance people would use to develop their film. I just happened to go over there, and the guy showed me how to do it. So I started taking my own photographs and developing my own film. I have every negative that I have the negative for. Every photograph that I took, I have the negative for. So they weren't confiscating. Some people would send pictures home, and they would review them, and they would confiscate them. So I got all my stuff, and I learned how to develop my own film. So I started taking photographs of children and old people and stuff like that. So I started developing some kind of feeling for the Vietnamese people. That is a big problem too, because of the Agent Orange that's affected so many of us. But I often wondered what happened to the children and the birth defects that happened after that? What about the Agent Orange that got into the water system and got into their food and got into their DNA and all that type of stuff? What about that? So I often think about that. I think we did a disservice to those people in Vietnam, trying to help them in this regime stuff, where we could have helped them develop in a different way. I think it was a spread of communism at the time. It was a different time then. It wasn't an expansion. It was a blocking the communist move after World War II.
So how would you? So one thing is you had a camera then.
Yeah, I bought a camera.
What kind of camera?
Minolta. I ended up getting a Nikon F2, which was really my favorite. So I had that for a long time.
Had you taken pictures before you went to Vietnam?
No.
So how did you end up with the Minolta?
I think it was the fact that the Photoshop was next to me, and I walked in there and I saw that, and then I went and got a Minolta. It was it just was there, and I got it. I didn't keep it too long. I ended up getting a Nikon camera.
Do you know how much they cost?
At the time, about $200. The Nikon cost about $350. The Minolta cost about $150, but the Nikon cost about $300.
So kind of walk me through. You'd go up to people around the base, and how to
No.
take a picture. What?
I would just take my camera with me everywhere I went, and just if the opportunity was there to do it. Like at the Civic Action, I had an M16. I was ready. But then they sent us around the school. They had colonels and stuff, so they didn't want anybody to kill the colonel. So they planted us around the back. And there's a few pictures I took of this man that was walking down. These kids were playing, I'd taken pictures. Barbed wire, house, children. That man walking by, he just stopped. They liked to have their picture taken. He was walking, he stopped, he turned, he looked right at me, and he didn't say nothing. He just looked at me, and I just took the picture. I have it. It's a beautiful, beautiful shot. A lot of culture. Now, what I did also was I learned how to develop the negative. If you get a different type of film, Tri-X, They have the different types. Some of them are real grainy. Some of them are hard contrast. So I started learning how to manipulate the contrast by pushing the f-stop, by developing it longer or shorter, in printing by opening it up to light and closing it. There was a lot of little things that I learned how to do that would enhance the picture at that point, you know. But just documenting the picture was what I was doing. I wasn't trying to get artsy. I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to document at the first time. I learned about composition and stuff like that later on, you know. But I started taking pictures of the bombs, taking pictures of the type of work we did. I took a picture of all the aircraft that was on the flight line downtown in the thing, and some characters. I have about 300 negatives that I still have.
So what would your fellow airmen, would they give you a hard time about
Yeah.
taking pictures?
Hey, what are you doing with the camera? You know, get to work. You know, oh, there's Chavez with this camera. You know, Mister Picture Taker or something. You know, they would do that, but they kind of wanted their picture taken, and sometimes I would take their pictures and go make. Then I learned how to develop it. I learned how to print the thing, so I would take them and give it to them so they can send it home. So they appreciated that. You know.
So napalm, you were doing the napalm bombs. Were you aware of how that would?
Yeah. Napalm sticks to babies. Okay. We know that. We put the snap, crackle, pop in the rice paddies. We had that slogan on our Jeep. We just worked. I didn't think about the damage it was taking. I really didn't at the time. I was doing my job. They told me to do my job. I'm doing my job. I didn't think it was atrocity. I think we were at war. You know, we were getting rocketed too. I mean, they were shooting and trying to kill us. So it wasn't like, oh, those, you know, we're doing something evil. We were just protecting ourselves and following what our commander in chief told us to do. That's it. That's what you do. That's what I did. I learned that from grammar school. I learned that in the Air Force. Just what I thought was my duty to do. And we didn't dwell on any of that stuff. We knew it was potent. It could kill us, you know, if we didn't operate and treat it right. So we treated it with a lot of kindness and softness, you know.
So did your feelings about that change over the years? Did you?
It got worse, meaning I felt more hurt from it, you know. I didn't feel guilty though. I haven't really. The guilt came with Michael dying. It didn't come from my job and what the combat that we did. You know, for a long time I hid my pride. I hid my pride. I didn't say what I did because of the climate, the political climate afterward. But now lately I've been feeling, hey, I did my job. I did what I had to do. I walked the walk, you know. I did it. So I started developing a lot more pride in my service, you know. For a long period of time, I wasn't proud, or I didn't feel what's the word guilty of anything wrongdoing, you know. I just didn't feel. I had no feeling for a long period of time. Until about the 90s. Then I started things started getting ugly and wild, and I didn't know what was going on, and I ended up in the hospital a couple of times, you know. And they didn't have a word PTSD at the time. They said, deal with it. You can deal with it. Pull up your bootstraps. What would John Wayne do, you know? They actually turned me away. Before there was a PTSD and all this stuff, there was what they called shell shock or guilt complex. They had those two words. It ended up, I'm ending up in the emergency ward is when they finally said, hey, your system is out of whack. You got to talk to us. So that's where I started my therapy in about 2000.
So two questions. Why did you feel guilty about Michael?
Because I lived and he didn't. I survived and he didn't. Because his mom was hurt and his brother and sister were hurt. They still hurt. They still hurt today. So it affects everybody, you know. It kind of affects everybody. I don't know why it, you know, we were buddies. We were neighbors. We had a long history, but he wasn't my relative, you know, but I did feel bad. It kind of caught me like, I didn't expect anybody to die. I didn't go there thinking that none of us were going to, I didn't think like that, you know. I thought everything was going to be fine. It didn't.
So Stephen, what were the symptoms you were having that you couldn't cope with stuff anymore?
Anger. Mostly anger. Confusion about yourself. Starting to blame everything that went wrong was your fault. You're being punished. I'm being punished for what I am because I got a ticket. I got a ticket, so that was God punishing me for being who I am. Somebody gets hurt, it was because I did it. My daughter used to get migraine headaches. I used to go berserk because I thought it was the DNA, the Agent Orange. It took 6 years before I had a child because of that. I was afraid. I was afraid that this Agent Orange crap was going to get. So when she got her migraines, and she would be like that, and I would take her to the thing and all that, I would go bananas. And it created a harsh relationship with my daughter. She thought I was mad at her for getting sick. And only recently have we cleared that issue up. I said, no, I was getting mad at me because you were suffering. So we kind of cleared that a little bit. But so the symptoms like that, my wife, she said she didn't want to have any children for 4 years because she thought that I was just going to flame out or something. I wasn't a mean person. I wasn't an angry person. I didn't rob anybody. I followed the 3 I's. I didn't do anything indecent, immoral, or illegal. I figured that if I stayed in that realm, that I would be okay. I'd be able to sleep at night and so forth. So it was anger, and then it started into depression. I would every morning at 4:30, I'd be bawling and crying. I started checking the perimeter, checking the doors, doing all kinds of stuff like that, you know, paranoia. But I used work, again, to break through. I worked at the Postal Service at the time, supervisor at the post office. I volunteered for every hour I could. Night work, Sunday work, holiday work, every work, any work. I work. And it kept me focused. Towards the end, when I retired, I didn't have that anymore, and that's when it hit the fan bad. I didn't have anything to push it and disguise it anymore. I had to deal with it. And that's when I went into what they call cognitive recovery. 12-week course of writing your thoughts down and sitting in front of somebody and reading it back to them. We were able to slice up all these different things. Michael's issue, my daughter's issue, the Agent Orange issue, trust. Trust was another thing. Okay, I have no trust. I try to trust. When I get burned, then I feel bad again. Okay, so I'm kind of like this. So that was the problem too. Trust was a big problem. Still is right now. So they asked me, can we talk you out of trusting us anymore? How much? I said 0. How strong do you feel about that? 100%. They didn't deal with it. They said, we're going to push that issue to the side. We're going to deal with what you want to talk about. So we never talked about that, and we didn't talk about my daughter's illnesses, but we talked about all the other things, about anger and depression. Why? What's the best one? They actually wanted me angry. They said, I started really depressed. Then I started getting angry. They said, we like this. We like you angry because you're starting to reject it. You're starting to, instead of beating yourself up, you're beating everybody else up. That's what we want from now. And that's how they started dealing with me and dealing with that. So.
Was it the vet centers? Is that where you got
The Pettis VA hospital in Redlands. There's a hospital in Redlands called Pettis. And Loma Linda. It might be Loma Linda right there. So that's where I ended up in emergency, and that's where I continued doing my therapy.
So how did you end up in emergency?
It was a bad day, road rage, just crying. I didn't know what to do. I barely got to the thing. I couldn't even drive myself there. It took a while. I had to see somebody. I didn't want to bother my wife, my friend, my buddy. I didn't want to put this on her. I wanted to take care of it, so I ended up trying to get over there. And now I ask for help. That's another thing I learned from the VA. Hey, why don't you ask for help? We got help here for you. You can ask for help. You can get help. And I was trying to deal with it on my own. I don't know if it was that my Mexican upbringing or machismo-ism or what. I don't know what it was, but I finally ended up going there, and they ended up doing some blood testing and stuff like that. My thyroids were all out of whack, which was creating the crime. Didn't know that. My fatigue and my sluggishness, that's another thing that was, and that's a direct result of the Agent Orange too. So that's I'm dealing with that right now.
So how were you exposed to Agent Orange?
They sprayed it. They sprayed it on. Actually, Agent Orange is a defoliant. It's like what's that stuff they sell?
DDT.
Yeah, the stuff they sell in the market, to get the weeds, weed be gone and all that. Well, that's what it is, and they would spray, and you could see, we saw they didn't spray it directly on us, but they sprayed it on the perimeter, and the vegetation would all go, so the Viet Cong or the sappers wouldn't be able to hide in the vegetation, so they would clear out and spray all around the areas that they want. That was in Vietnam, okay? Then it would see, nobody thinks that the rain would come, it would drop into the water, would get into the water table, it would move on, we'd shower with it, we'd drink water with it, we'd make coffee with it, eventually in time, So that's how that did. Now, when we came back, we said, hey, you guys were spraying us with detoxin Agent Orange. They said, we don't want to do nothing. We weren't doing that. So they had a lawsuit. They had to say, okay, we were spraying poison on you guys, okay, but only a little bit. Then they said, well, wait a minute. So they kept on going, and they found out that they sprayed in Okinawa, they sprayed in Thailand, and they sprayed in Korea. Now they're just admitting that. So all the people that were in Korea, Thailand, and Thailand, and Okinawa, maybe you guys are contaminated also. They're just barely coming out with that. So I became angry with the government for lying to me like that. And I told my congressman all about it, and he said, I understand, but, we were able to get past that and try to get some help, because I needed some help in some of the things that I'm getting. They're giving me help. The VA is good, but they play this game. Now, before, if you claim Agent Orange, they said, well, were you in Vietnam? And you said, I got a DD-214. You guys sent me. Yeah. They said, we had to prove by a ticket, bus ticket, or a membership card, or any physical thing that you can prove that you were in Vietnam. We had to prove that we were in Vietnam, see, because they were battling this lawsuit, workman's comp lawsuit and so. So we got into the politics of that time. That was part of my PTSD too. I said, wait a minute, I honored my country like my dad, everybody. I did what you guys told me to do. You guys did this, and now you're lying to us. Now you're rejecting us. And I thought that was very bad. I got very angry at that. But I'm getting help now. And they did poison us, and we have to live through it. Many people are dying from it. Many people are dying from Agent Orange infections. So that wall with 60,000 people on it, they're thinking of creating a second one for the Agent Orange people that died on Agent Orange.
So, so Stephen, you were in Vietnam for how long?
For 12 months.
12 months, and then you came back.
For about 10 months.
And then you went back.
Then I volunteered to go back, but they sent me to Thailand, Utapao Air Base in Thailand. Again, to work. When they brought me here, they said, we're not bombing anybody, so you're going to be a driver. So they cross-trained me to be a transportation specialist. So I was a driver. I took the equipment out to the aircraft. I took the pilots out to the aircraft, picked them and brought them back. And it got to be a drag, and things were happening. I met Michael's mom. I got angry and stuff. My girlfriend left me. So I was pretty pissed off, and I volunteered to go back to Vietnam, but they sent me to Thailand instead.
And what did you do in Thailand?
I was a munitions specialist again. Yeah. And they had B-52s. They held 108 bombs each, and 3 an hour. Figure that out. 3 an hour, every hour, okay? And we're just like working. So that's what they did. So maybe they would divert. The 3 planes would take off, and then one of them would go that way, one of them would go that way. It's like a bus schedule. This one will go there, and then that one will go over here. And they had it rotating. It's organized, believe it or not. They have a schedule of these people going to certain locations. And so we just see them flying off, you know.
So what kind of bombs were those?
750-pound high explosive and 500-pound high explosive. That's all they had at that base.
And they were dropping them in Vietnam?
Vietnam and Cambodia, probably. Yeah.
So you did that for how long then?
I did that for 12 months.
And then you came back?
Then I came back and discharged.
Okay. So, so do I remember correctly that you ended up going into the reserves?
Yes. I got out, and I was moved from Los Angeles to a place called Moreno Valley, which is near Riverside. It just so happens to be at the doorstep of the base that I was at. I was stationed there. So I was looking around for something to do because I worked all night. I worked nights, and I came there, and I said, I'm going to walk over there and see what they got. So I walked in. My hair was down to my back down here, okay? And I walked in, and I said, hey, you guys, I used to be on this base. I used to be with you guys. I was in the Air Force. You know, I'd like to join. I'd like to see about reserve. They said, sure. How long ago? And you have to be 30. I think the cutoff is 34. You can't, after 34, you can't get in the reserves anymore. I was about 35 by then, but they minus your active duty time, so it made me eligible. 16 years after I got out, I'm ending up trying to get in the reserve. 16 years. I got long hair. The guy says, you willing to take the test again? I said, yeah. So they scheduled me for a test. And he said, you willing to take a drug test right now? And I said, sure. So we went to the hospital right there, did our drug test. He said, I was kind of wondering about you. I didn't know if we should go for the test. So he said, you're clear. So he said, have you ever smoked marijuana? I said, yeah, I did. And he said, how much? I said, about a ton. He said, what? I said, not all at one time. But what happened was I was good all the way up to Thailand. And then in Thailand, they introduced me to marijuana. And that was probably the worst drug that not bad. That's probably That's all I did. I didn't do heroin. They had a lot of heroin over there. There was guys that were working on the bomb that were doing skag and heroin, okay? And they were doing smoking marijuana, but not right there in front while they were working, but I used to see them in town. And that was kind of on the low end. Then they started what they call Operation Golden Flow, where they would call you in at random urine testing. So that kind of got everybody, thing. But before that, like in Vietnam, I was in the foxhole where there was a Puerto Rican guy, and he was smoking marijuana. And I just didn't think it was good because people would smell it, and our location would be compromised. And so I really didn't do nothing in Vietnam at all, maybe a beer or two. But and then he would sleep, and then he'd get up and say, "You could sleep for a while." I said, "No, sir, I'm staying awake. My time. This is me. This is me." So I was pretty on the straight and narrow. In Thailand, it kind of got loose, and we lived off base because we were by then 3 stripers. We were NCOs, non-commissioned officers. We had separate rations. We didn't have to go to chow hall. They gave us money to eat on our own, like big kids. And then that's where I was introduced to that. Now, after I got out, I didn't anymore, and then I got in the reserve. So, and in the post office, they're checking you all the time. So that kind of got me back into line. I like that. I like that. It gives you something to work with. They let us know, be good on your own. Forget about it.
I'm sorry, I missed the part. You liked what?
What's that?
You said, I like that. What are you referring to?
Oh, I forgot.
So, did you ever see people develop bad drug habits in Vietnam?
Yeah, and Thailand. I saw people turn into bones. I mean, they were like a skeleton. They were doing all this heroin and stuff. And I'd say, dude, but I wouldn't preach to them. And the airports were checking their urine and stuff. I think a couple of them got caught, I'm sure. The first day I was in Thailand, this guy was there, and he was on restriction. And I walked in, they said, "Don't leave the base. You guys don't even have a pass. You don't even know the language. Don't leave the base." Well, this guy talked me into leaving the base and taking off to a place called Pattaya, which is a resort beach. The first day I was there, and he takes off in a little Honda, going through the jungle. There's jungle all on both sides. Where we going, man? And we take off, and that's what they were doing. They had these bongs, and he was smoking. I didn't do it at the time because I thought, I don't know what this is, but that's what they were doing and stuff. They were actually the children of the officers that were at the base. They would bring their family, and maybe the family would live off base. So most of them were Americans, But in Thailand, they had heroin, and I thought that was pretty evil. It was a low, but that's the area that it's from, Cambodia,
What do you mean?
Afghanistan, huh?
It's low end. What do you mean by
It's not the grade that they would use to inject. It would be like they would dry it out and chop it up, and they would ingest it by snorting it, or they would smoke it in a cigarette. But they didn't do the injections and stuff like that. But their hunger, they didn't eat. They would be up a lot, and they started losing weight and stuff. A couple of them looked pretty bad. I stayed away from that.
Do you know if anybody got
Kicked out?
Kicked out.
That first guy the guy that I met the first day, that's why he was restricted. I found out later they were kicking him out, He was from San Francisco, too.
So what is skag?
Skag is heroin. It's a low-end, low grade heroin.
So when you came back from Thailand and you were discharged, that would have been
72.
72. So what was the there was still an anti-war movement going on?
Very much.
And Chicano movement going on.
Yes.
So did you get involved in either one of them?
No. Actually, before 72, it was when I came back from Vietnam. That's when a lot of turmoil, and in 72 too. When was the Chicano
moratorium.
Moratorium was in 70?
1970.
It was 70, so it had already happened, okay. There was a lot of pride, a lot of Chicano pride. It was in the music. I noticed when I came back, I was listening to oldies, Cannibal in the Headhunters, the Midnight. And I came back, and all of a sudden, this guy named Santana was playing. I didn't know who. They said, "Who? Have you heard Santana?" Who's Santana? So that's how distant it was. But all the music that Malo, Santana had upgraded El Chicano. It was getting more radical, more faster. The tempo was up. So I noticed that. I went to one time. We had to take off our uniforms at the airport to avoid confrontations in coming home. There was actually confrontations. Okay, so we would have to take off our uniform. People would say wise ass stuff. Hey, you a lifer, you a kisser, you do this, you do that. That baby this and that. And they would do like that. They weren't warriors. These people were not warriors. They had no business telling me nothing. Okay, they didn't know what the hell they were talking about. But there was a lot of that. So we did have to take off our units and come in. When I came back from Vietnam, I got in a taxi at LAX with 4 suits. Taxi driver, there was maybe three suits. And I was there. No talking. One guy said, "Where are you coming from?" The taxi driver. "Vietnam." Didn't say nothing. I could feel tension, okay? Nobody said, "Welcome home." Nobody said, "How was it?" They just shut up. So then I got home and stuff. There was another thing about the tension. Oh, the Chicano moratorium and the movimiento. That became again a cross, like my great grandfather getting the Congressional Medal of Honor. Okay, it became like, wait a minute, they're anti-war and I'm their enemy. I was an enemy. They weren't saying, "Hey, welcome home, brother. You can join us, and here's what we're doing." They immediately targeted, and I became them. Okay, instead of us, I became them. Sometimes we become them in life, when we get older. But all of a sudden, I was them. So I had like a confrontational start. I mean, all my friends were Chicano. All my relatives are Chicanos. So it's not a big deal, like I got to hide or nothing like that. But I did not participate. I knew a lot of people that were doing it, but I didn't participate in the marches per se. The culture, yes. The anti-war stuff, I was glad Nixon ended the war. Okay? I was glad it was. I think the people in Vietnam and the veterans suffered enough, for what basically was a business war, oil, rubber, maybe stopped communism, 2 assassinations, 2 regime changes caused by the United States. The United States was in Chile, Allende, regime change. Cuba was happening. So there was not only the Vietnam tension, but there was like a flare-up all over the world almost, I remember going to a football game with my dad at the Coliseum. Good times with my dad going to the football games. We went to all the games. Whether I wanted to or not, I was going to go Sunday with my dad. So they would say, "Could all the veterans stand up, please?" I had my jacket on and my long hair, and I just didn't. My dad would say, "Steve, they're calling for you to stand up, stand up." And I just didn't have any pride at all. Not because I wasn't proud. It was because of the anger that I had for, the homecoming. And I didn't care about homecoming too much. We say to each other, "Welcome home," just as a jest, just as a punch, If they made a parade for me right now outside, I probably wouldn't attend. It's just not me, But I do appreciate, at least saying thank you. Now people say thank you. They'll see a hat or they'll see this, and they'll come by and say thank you. And I appreciate that, but it's too late. It's way too late. It happened already, and I've experienced that. So, did it affect me? Yes, there was a lot of problems there, and I didn't participate in the moratorium. I do a little bit now. I do have some compassion for some things, but there was a lot of upheaval at that time. I remember it as negative. I have a negative memory of that.
So what was your homecoming like when you got home?
Quiet. Just went right to work, like if
But your
nothing ever
family-
happened.
Your family must have been.
They were happy to see me. I surprised them when I walked in. I threw my duffel bag on the porch, and they all came out. What's going on? And there I was. So it was just business as usual. Back to work. I got a job downtown working, and went to school a little bit, getting GI Bill, and eventually, well, there wasn't too much work either. You had to just get what you could, and I was happy to do whatever I could. They had the Emergency Employment Act with Nixon, Title VII, veterans, keep the veterans off the streets. So they gave us jobs at libraries. I got a job at Griffith Park as a groundsman working around the observatory. Beautiful environment. And then they were hooked up with the photo center, which is a photography center for the public. So I went there and talked them into hiring me there instead of at the gardening thing. And I started working at the photo center, started my photography again. So I had already known about developing and stopping and developing and washing and all that stuff. So I worked there for a few years until I was called by the Postal Service to work. I started 1977 with the Postal Service as a carrier.
And you did that for how long?
33 years. But I went from carrying. I got bit twice by German shepherds when I was carrying. I got robbed once. So I thought, I want to get into the factory type of thing. I'm going to get out of this carrying stuff and move to another field, So I ended up moving up and out.
So when you got bitten, did you have to go to the hospital or anything?
Where's that?
When you got bitten by the German Shepherd?
Oh, yeah. Workman's comp case, In those days, you had to sue. The post office didn't step in and do it for you. You had to sue them on the separate workman's comp case. So it was just, they bit me twice.
Where did they bite you?
Right here in the back. In fact, the German shepherds, they're the smartest. They would hide and wait until you pass them, then they would nab you,
Both on your calves? On your
Yeah,
right calves?
both on the caps, yeah.
So how long were you out for that?
A couple days.
Okay. I know I have it here someplace. I'm looking for it, but I can't find your wife. What's your wife's name?
Juanita Palacios.
Okay. So how did you meet her?
I went to a dance. The premiers, the Ambertones, and the Midnighters were playing at St. Alfonso's Church over here, and she was there. And I knew her sister, and her sister introduced me to her. So I was standing there, and I was talking to her, and she said, well, if you guys aren't going to ask me to dance, we're going to stand over there, because you're blocking us from getting people. So I thought, wow, I like this girl. She speaks her mind, I kind of I said, wow. She spoke up and she got a little sarcastic, so I kind of noticed her, So we were outside, and my friend had a car, and they were going to go catch the taxi, so they were walking to the corner. So I said, hey, how you doing? You want to ride? And they said, no, thank you. And then I said, hey, can I call you out? She said, I don't have a pencil. Can I get your phone number? She said, I don't have a pencil. So my friend did. He said, I got one. So she was thinking of giving me the wrong phone number. She told me that. But she gave me the right number, and after that, we started calling. The thing about my wife is I I got to, I enjoyed her company. I could be there all day and be with her and talking and doing stuff. It wasn't all sex. You know what I'm talking about? It was a lot more than that. I got to talk to her. And she was very, very, so we started dating and stuff. And eventually we got married. And I think she did a really good job dealing with me and my PTSD, even though she didn't know what it was either. So now she's saying, you know what? Remember this and that? What was that? I said, that was the PTSD. I was doing this and that. She said, I didn't know that. So a lot of the clarity started coming out now and stuff like that. She's from Texas. She's from San Antonio.
I'm not saying this, but they say the best women are from San
Is that what
Antonio.
they say? Marty Robbins said that in El Paso, remember? Huh? I fell in love with a Mexican girl. Yeah. So,
Um, so you all waited a while to have your daughter.
yeah.
And so your niece that you are caregiver for.
I'm a caregiver for my niece, yeah.
And so did you all ever adopt her?
No, she's too old to adopt. You know, she's 36, so she's an adult. It's different. I had to be her conservator, so it was you can't adopt. Yeah, I had to be her conservator. So I petitioned to be her conservator. I didn't do it out of loyalty. I didn't do it out of volunteerism. It just happened because my sister died and nobody else was there. My parents were there, and they were the ones that were taking my sister to dialysis and taking care of that. So I kind of retired. It was close to my retirement. I got out of the post office, and I started helping, just helping out. Towards the end of my postal service, that's when my PTSD started coming out too, and I started getting very, very weird and angry, and I started yelling at everybody, you know. So I took a whole year off before I retired. I had all the sick leave, and you know how they say save your sick leave? I used all of it, a whole year of sick leave, and then I came back and said, I'm out of here. So it was the end. It was the end. I couldn't do it anymore.
So what year did your sister pass away?
My sister passed away in 2010. So it's been 8 years now that I've been doing it. Every day. I cook for her. I give her insulin. I give her medicines. Take her to her appointments. All kinds of stuff
Does she
like
live
that.
with y'all?
Yeah. We have houses next to each other, so convenience that we live with each other. Yeah.
So you ended up after, I guess after retirement, you started the radio.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I started for some reason doing the palliative care and taking care of people and stuff. I got all of a sudden got into this care thing, and then all of a sudden I wanted to be the manager of a band and promote. And I'm not even a musician, so I got a band and I got the old stuff from way back, the old stuff, and said, you guys aren't going to play Brick House. You're not going to play Tighten Up. You're not going to play the bars. You're going to play the old stuff, okay? So they did that, and they had a little niche called the East LA Review, because we were doing a review, you know. And so we did that for a few years until they imploded. They wanted to do the bars, and I didn't want to do all that stuff. It's not what I wanted to do. So we were very successful. You know, we got into some very large festivals, and we were doing good, and we were growing. And I added 2 girls to the group, and oh man, we were doing good. And then all of a sudden, they imploded, and it was getting difficult for me to deal with crowds. I was getting very paranoid, very angry, very untrusting, very nervous. Didn't want to do it. I didn't want it. So I backed out and fired the band, and they went away, and I had that. Now, I have friends that were in the internet radio business, and when I used to drive home from work, I used to listen to a radio station at the University of Riverside. It's called KUCR, 88.3 FM, Radio Aztlan. and they would be on. So I would turn on my radio and listen to it until at a certain point they didn't broadcast far, but when I got within their range, I would listen to it all the way home. So I got to meet these people, and then there was another person that went to KTLA, but they call it KCLA. KTLA is TV, KCLA is computer. So he was in KCLA, and he would broadcast every Thursday night. And he'd call me up and say, "Dude, did you hear my broadcast?" And I'd say, "No, I can't be sitting in front of a computer at 6 o'clock on Thursday. Can I hear it tonight? Can I hear it tomorrow? Can I hear it later? No." And KUCR, can I hear it? I can only hear on Friday? Yeah. So that got me into, and technology. Technology started coming. There was no handhelds at the time. There was flip phones at the most. So I started thinking of a way to communicate and deal with and do all these things that they're already doing. The radio station's already there. KCLA was already there, but they didn't have the right thing, It was inconvenient to me. So the technology and the crossing of all that stuff, and the fact that I wanted to go but I couldn't, and I had a lot of passion about the culture and the music, we developed the internet radio station. So I'm able to communicate, we're able to communicate in that way. Now, in time, my therapy and stuff has helped me a little bit. I still have the problem. I thought I was going to be well. They say you're never going to be well, but you're going to be able to control some of your anxieties. And this is what happened. It's still the same stuff, but I'm able to maybe have a tool to work with, or a plan. See, so we develop plans, and we have tools. Sometimes I pull the wrong tool out, but or don't or get nervous and paranoid. But then I get out. I don't try to push it, So there's plans that we have and ways that we deal with it. But the music and the radio station is sort of an outlet, and we're communicating with a lot of people, and we're promoting our culture. It's not only just music, but it's interviews and announcements and all kinds of stuff like that, So I'm having fun with that. It's low overhead. I do it from my house, and I do it all 24. It's on right now. So, and we're reaching 11 million people a year. Yeah. So we're doing fine. We're doing fine on that. And I want to use that as a tool to, like the interviews like you're doing right here. That's why I contacted you. Because of that. And I was on the internet, I saw that, I said, this is good. This is telling people, hey, this person is just as valuable as this person. What happened to you? What happened to you? What happened to you? All the stories are similar. How did you deal with cancer? How did you deal with chemo? All these things are very important. And I think there's a lot of people that want to listen to it,
So when you started the internet radio, what year was that?
About 2 years after I retired. That's when all the stuff would start, the turmoil. I had all this time on my hands and no knowledge of what to do. So about 2007, I'd say, is when I started meeting these and we started coordinating I have 9 DJs. It's a mall. It's a musical mall. If you don't like Tejano, and you like that, and if you like this, you don't have to, you can go over here, So so all of them do Tejano, doo-wop, oldies, interviews, American classics. We have Frank Sinatra on our station too. So they each do their own thing and independently, and they each change their shows once a week. That way, if you want to hear it, didn't have a chance to hear it on Thursday, you can hear it on Friday. If you can't hear it on Friday, you can hear it on Saturday. You can hear it twice. It's there. So we started doing that, and it's very good. And then we started adding records into it too, vinyl records. So
do you pay the disc jockeys or the?
No.
It's all volunteer.
It's all volunteer, and I don't charge them either. So we have like a working relationship, and they're behaving, and we're still moving, and they're developing their own thing. I have rules: no cursing, no trying to overthrow the government, and no rap. Those are the three things that I tell them. Everything else, you want to sell hats, you want to tell them about your daughter's quinceañera, do whatever you want. It's for you to work, But they have to announce my radio station, and they're nice to me on promoting. I have two blind DJs. One of them is in Waxahachie, Texas, near Dallas. He sends me his stuff by telephone, and I assemble it here and do that. The other one is Roberto Tijerina. He's over here in UCR. He develops his shows and then sends it to me on CD. I download it, and then I send it to my webmaster. We have 9. 3 of them are Vietnam veterans, including myself. So there's 2 other ones, Frankie and Sugar Bear, Frankie Firme and Sugar Bear. And now these guys, they're really internet personalities. See, Roberto Tijerino, El Beto Man, he's a personality on the radio, but he's also, he got a BA degree. He wrote a book, and he does all the things. Frankie Firme, he's a Frankie Firme on the internet personality, but he's a psychiatric nurse for the county and been there for 35 years. So he has his license and stuff. So these people, these characters are really people, and they just want this outlet. Blind guys want the outlet, and I'm the person that's wanting to use it, So it's a good relationship right now.
So the webmaster is volunteer too?
No, I pay the webmaster. See, I'm the shot caller because I pay all the bills. I pay all the bills. Nobody pays me nothing. I pay all the bills. I take care of all the technical stuff. I got it all set up, and they're happy with that. And I pay my webmaster. And in fact, tomorrow he leaves to San Antonio, Texas. He's moving out of California. It's too expensive here, and he wants to live large in Texas, So he's going to San Antonio, and we're going to. So all the DJs say, so what's going to happen? Are we going to go away? Are you going to get another guy? I say, we're internet, dude. We're worldwide. We're worldwide. We can do this. So it's good. It's a good thing. We're reaching a lot of Japan, Australia. They're very interested in the Chicano culture, the lowriding culture, the music culture. They're still interested. There's a niche for that, but it's very small, but it's around. France is very big on salsa. They love salsa.
So why no rap?
It's probably my fault. I don't understand it. I mean, I can't hear that fast. Some people can speak that fast or run that fast. I can't listen. I mean, I just don't get it. And it's all the same to me. I just don't get it. I don't get no love story out of it. I don't get no love loss. I don't get no returning home and nothing. I just get a lot of anger. First it was filth. There was a lot of dirty words. And then it just got angry. And it's good for the person. It's good for the rappers. It's good for the urban. They have something to say, and they're expressing themselves. It's an art form. Okay, I respect that. I just don't want to hear it. Tejano, I can only hear so much banda, okay? And then I have to switch over and listen to something else. So it goes with everything, I think. Rock and roll, all that stuff.
So Stephen, so internet radio, it's really kind of like a podcast, isn't it?
It's a podcast, yeah. I call it internet radio, but technology and time and all these things that happen, it developed. Handheld phones weren't around 3 years ago, right? Maybe a couple people had them, but I had a flip phone for a long time. Handheld, and I developed my website to fit into a handheld now. Now it should be convenience. Now it's podcasting. So before I considered it as a PC internet radio system, but then when it got into this technical stuff and you start punching buttons and stuff, it's really podcasting. That's all it is. Yeah.
So did you teach yourself all the technology that was necessary?
Mhm.
And how did you do that?
Just hit and miss, asking questions. I learned everything. I learned how to run the programs. I learned a lot of stuff. In fact, I was talking to a person. He said, "I remember you didn't even want to touch a computer. You didn't even want to do it." And I said, "Yeah, I remember that." Then I got a computer, and then we started learning and doing all this stuff. So I learned that. I got a webmaster, and I can do his job, but I don't do it. I don't want to do his job, you know. Let him do his job. He does it better. So, and he's reasonable. So I didn't learn that part, but I know it. I didn't really get intense on it, but all the other stuff, yeah, I learned it. And I'm still learning because technology is changing every day as we speak, you know. So I'm trying to take advantage of technology, trying to organize the radio station a little bit more. It's not a monetary thing more so than it is an asset, a fun thing. I consider it to be fun, you know. People say, "Well, how are you making money?" The first question they say is, "Are you making money?" I said, "No, I'm not losing money either. I'm kind of like right in the middle there."
How are you breaking even though?
I'm breaking even because I do get sponsors. I do get people that give me $100 a month. It doesn't cost $100 a month to run the system. It's cheap. It's cheap, and it's right there at your house. You don't have to rent a house. You don't have to get a guard. You don't have to buy insurance. You don't have to pay gas to go over there. It's there, and it's a free access, you know. Luckily, we still have free access to internet. Once they start blocking that, it's going to get hard. They start putting restrictions and stuff like that. But right now, I sell T-shirts, I sell CDs, little stuff like that. We have appearances. Each DJ is called to MC shows. We MC Joe Bataan show. We MC the Barbara Mason show. We do a lot of MCing and stuff like that. So we get exposure that way. My company gets exposure from these guys saying, "Hi, I'm Frankie Fielder. I'm Beto Man from East LA Review." See, and people write it down. They might go to the site and check it out. You know, it's good.
So Stephen, that's about all the questions I
Oh.
have. Is there anything that I did not ask about that I should? Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to add?
The VA. I just want to. I think I already said the VA takes care of me. I'm going to have to continue going to the VA because of the aging on issue, the thyroid issues, the high blood pressure, the diabetes, those type of things. So I'm going to rely on the VA to help me. And right now, I'm not disappointed at all. I was disappointed before they didn't have this program. I really believe that when you go in the military, you go to basic training for a reason to learn your method of operation in the military. When you get discharged, we should have a basic training to get out. We're in civies. Come and eat for free. You don't have to go to any of the classes, but we have psychiatrists for you. You're going to experience these types of things. You're going to get mad at somebody and reach for your weapon and find out it's not there anymore. So you have to deal with this stuff, you know. Your anger, you have to tone it down. You can't go for broke, you know. You got to temper it. So they should have a basic training for outbound people, and I think it would help a lot with our veterans. I love our veterans. They're heroes. I love our firefighters and our first responders, our policemen. I'm very, very, very dedicated to the structure of the city, you know, of functioning. I don't think everybody should just do what you want. Maybe it's from the learning from the Catholic school and the military and the post office, you know, all that have to follow rules. But I think rules are good, you know.
So let me ask you this. When you left Vietnam and you came back stateside, was that too abrupt? One day you were.
Yeah. I mean, one day I could still smell my the odor of Vietnam, the smell of uh, dry hay. It's the best I can. Warm dry hay is how it smelled. Yeah, it was like, oh, you were there. When did you come back? Yesterday. Wow, you were there like just yesterday. Yeah, I think it was way too abrupt of a thing. But all the other stuff, like nobody knew what PTS. There was no word, but they could tell you, hey, you might have a little bit of this, and you might have. They would always talk about nightmares. I wouldn't have nightmares. I just have confusion. Like a bunch of trains heading at the same time. It's just confusing. So what do you do when that happens? So they teach you how to deal with that type of stuff. And I think it would be good for people just to say this is what it is. Because before you didn't know what it was. Why am I crying? Did I turn into a bitch or what the hell's going on? Why am I crying? What's happened to me? Why is this happening? Then I find out your thyroids are out of whack and you're going through some depression. Oh, well, that's good to know. Instead of thinking that I'm just nuts, and then I was laying it out on everybody else. Not good. Not
So,
good.
so I was confused. Earlier, you said with Michael's mom that you,
Nellie
yeah,
was
did you ever talk to her?
that day.
When you came back, you talked to her? Or that
The,
2 weeks later? 2
the,
weeks later?
huh?
2 weeks later?
2 weeks after I came back, I went to see the parents.
So you,
The dad was there too.
yeah, oh, so you did, but you did talk to the mom too?
She was the main one. She was the one that blurted out, "Why did it take you so long to come and see me? They killed my son." And then he got married to this lady, Eleanor, and she said they gave her the flag, because they have to give it to the wife, not to the mom. If he wasn't married, they would have given it to the mom. So she felt offended there. Um, then that ended. Then I got out. Then 1992 came around, and I saw Michael's brother. His brother was the same age as my brother, so we were like, the family was kind of set like that. So I talked to him. We talked for a long time. I met his dad. Saw his dad there, and I saw him. He's retired. He was old and stuff. But his mom was a recluse. She got into a home and nobody goes to visit, and she would be very angry and stuff like that. It was difficult to sit there and talk. I'm sure she was a good person as far as inside, but I think it just ruined her thing. So I didn't see her. I heard where she was, and they said they didn't even give me any direction about where she was. They just said she's in a home and not well. And they divorced. I think they divorced when Michael was killed too. And I had another person named Lizaraga, a cousin that passed away also. But I didn't know his family that well. They were from Texas, so, and no distant cousin, third cousin.
Do you know where in Texas?
Yeah.
El Paso, by chance?
Have I been to Texas?
No, was he from El Paso, Texas? Because I know some of the
Oh, you? Oh, really? He was from Houston. That's on the other side of Texas, right?
So is there anything else we should?
No, I'd like to thank you for
I have a
doing.
couple of questions real
Okay.
quick.
Wait, if you wouldn't mind, because we're trying to, oh, okay, go ahead.
3 questions that you can ask. One is, what do you do with your uniform? Do you still have it?
You know what? I do have, and I was going to bring it. I do have my flop hat. I didn't keep my uniforms because, the environment over there would start, everything, they had what they call rip stop. And the stuff would come apart after a while. So it would kind of dry rot after a while. So the uniforms would disintegrate, but I did keep all my stripes and my name tags. I do have that. And I do have a couple other items from my uniforms that I did keep.
Second question, you still go to Vietnam gatherings. Are you okay with those?
I do not go to Vietnam gatherings. Um, I have avoided all the reunions that we've had, except I did go to my reserve unit gathering. I retired from the reserves. Actually, they kicked me out of the reserves because I had was taking medicine for my PTSD. How ironic that is. On my 19th year and 11th month, 1 month short of 20 years, they take a random test and I had to claim my PTSD medicine. Here's my prescription. Here's it. I'm claiming that this is going to be in my urine. They said it is. Kicked me out. But they gave me an honorable discharge. But they said you can't be with us anymore. So I was discharged because of that.
And the last question, the most important question: would you do it again?
Absolutely. I would do it right now. I would do it in a minute. Knowing all the things that have happened to me, I would do it anyway because that's how I feel. I think everybody would do it again. All veterans would do it again. They'll tell you that. Every one of them will do it again. Um, for what reason? Patriotism, sense of duty, adventure. I don't know what would do it, but I think I would do it again. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.